The competition regulator blocks a major telco tie-up, worried that it would cement Telstra's dominant position. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back as Foreign Minister Penny Wong visits Beijing, and Elon Musk quits as boss of Twitter. It's Thursday, the 22nd of December, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. I'm quite excited about today's date. I know you're not going to be. 221222.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, good. Right. It's obviously the end of the year. You're being a bit more generous than normal.
And you've lowered the bar in terms of things that interest you. It would
maybe you're not being so generous.
No, maybe not. It was a brief moment of generosity, which is now past. Now, Sean, we've got a great interview coming up today. Jason Pellegrino, the Chief Executive of Domain, a very good time to be talking to Jason.
It is a great time. Of course, the end of a year, which really hasn't been so good for property. We talk about what's happened with Domain. Domain's share price has really tumbled hard this year, and he goes through that. He's still upbeat. Jason's a lovely fella, and he's still upbeat about 2023. So we talk to him about what he expects to see. Great interview.
Yes, it is. It's coming up a little bit later on. The main story, though, this morning, Sean, the competition regulator has blocked the network sharing agreement proposed by Telstra and number 3 player TPG.
Yes, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission said after examining the deal, the proposed arrangements will likely lead to less competition in the longer term and leave Australian mobile users worse off over time in terms of pricing and regional coverage. TPG immediately said it would appeal the decision. Now, the $1.8 billion tie-up proposed a 10-year arrangement where TPG would have decommissioned or transferred its mobile sites in regional and urban fringes to Telstra, and then acquired mobile network services from Telstra. TPG would give Telstra access to most of its regional spectrum, and by using part of the Telstra network, TPG's coverage would increase from 96% to almost 99%. The competition watchdog said that mobile coverage, speed and data allowances are all determined by investment in radio access networks, and the effect of the arrangement would be to entrench Telstra's leadership in regional areas, and consumers would be worse off.
Telstra certainly wasn't happy about the outcome, Sean.
No, Telstra boss Vicky Brady called the decision extremely disappointing and a massive missed opportunity for the people, businesses and communities of regional Australia. Telstra's share price fell 0.5% yesterday in a very strong market. It was a big underperformer yesterday, Telstra. TPG share price was down 1%. A winner yesterday, though, was number 2 player, Optus, who has fought hard against the decision.
Now, I don't know if you'll know this, but what happens now? Is there, I mean, I can't imagine there's a way to appeal against a decision made by the ACCC, but is there a way that they can kind of reconfigure the deal and make it perhaps a way that might satisfy the ACCC and have another crack, or is that it now?
Yeah, so you can appeal an ACCC decision. That will take a bit of time. What most organisations do, though it may not be applicable in this case, is kind of rework the deal. I think the problem here is that TPG wants greater coverage, fair enough, but it's actually giving over a lot of what it does in rural Australia and fringe urban areas, which means Telstra gets its hands on that. Now, that's the part that the ACCC doesn't like. So to rearrange that very fundamental part of the deal might be a bit difficult.
Yeah, it would kind of gut the deal pretty much in its entirety. All right. Okay, how about local markets? What happened yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 had a pretty good day. It closed up 1.3% to 7,116 points. Now, gold, iron ore, lithium, coal and gas producers all did pretty well. BHP led the way, rising 2.4%. Woodside Energy was up 2.7%. Fortescue finished up 3%. Santos did 2.7% better. But the big outperformer was Newcrest Mining, the gold digger. It closed up 6.5%. More than 80% of companies finished higher yesterday, Michael. In terms of sectors, the banks were really the underperformers. The best performer yesterday were gold diggers Evolution Mining and Silver Lake Resources. Both rose around 8%. Worst was lithium battery maker Novonix, which does jump around quite a bit. It closed down 7%.
All right, what about international markets?
It's almost the end of the year. So, Michael, let me tell you about bonds.
Hang on. I did start the show by saying that at the end of the year, you seem to lower the bar for what you believe to be fascinating. And so it appears now bonds now manage to just sneak over that limit, do they?
Oh, no. Bonds are great. They're very important. Why? Because they're relatively safe investments, particularly government bonds, and pretty much all other major asset classes are measured against what bonds are doing. So when bonds move, everything else moves. So when yields on bonds go up, for example, as we saw when the Bank of Japan shifted its policy position this week, other asset classes like equities went down. Very, very important bonds. Now, investors have now upgraded their expectations of how far interest rates will have to go as policymakers fight inflation. So the peak in the Bank of England's policy rate was supposed to be 4.5%, or that's what the market thought. The market now thinks it's 4.7%. This week, analysts have rethought what they think the European Central Bank will do. It's expected to push the deposit rate to 3.2%. It was only 2.75% about a week ago. The different one is the US Central Bank. Now, the US Federal Reserve has said it will hit 5.1% for its benchmark rate, though bond futures indicate that it'll be a bit less than that. What's it all mean? Rates might be going higher than we think, and other asset classes like equities could suffer as a result. So it is the end of the year. Bond yields mean everything to investors. So, Michael, I hope you take a little bit more notice of them in 2023.
Hang on a second. I didn't say they weren't important. I just said they weren't particularly exciting. And I think that's actually a fairly objective assessment, that you compare bonds to, say, crypto, and there's not that much volatility.
I think that's the difference between an investor and a non-investor, Michael. I think you've just defined it.
Yes, I have. Well played me. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Foreign Minister Penny Wong met with her Chinese counterpart last night, and the signs so far are positive, though don't expect any major changes quickly.
And that seems to be the one-sentence wrap of it all, as one media outlet reported Senator Wong as saying the ice thaws, but slowly. Senator Wong is heading up a small contingent in the first official ministerial visit to Beijing since before COVID to celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. She appeared on the front page of the China Daily newspaper yesterday. They had a very positive headline. Now, that's significant because it signals to Chinese citizens that Australia is, if not in the good books, at least out of the black book. Ahead of the meeting, Senator Wong said Australia wants to resume annual leaders' meetings between Australia and China. It is a very slow process, but at least we are now heading in the right direction.
But it is progress, at least, yes. Now, Origin Energy's share price jumped 6.6% yesterday, Sean, after it said takeover bidders Brookfield and EIG Group found no material adverse issues during due diligence.
Yeah, why I find this fascinating is because the offer price is $9 a share. The 6.6% jump yesterday took the share price to $7.52 a share. So clearly there's $1.48 of arbitrage in there. Now, Origin said it had extended the exclusive due diligence period for the bidders until mid-January, but so far, so good. There had been plenty of speculation that the intervention in the gas market by the federal government last week might scupper the bid. It seems that hasn't happened. Now, there's still plenty of hurdles to overcome. The Foreign Investment Review Board has to approve it. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission also has to approve it. Still, there's a big gap between $7.52, which is where it closed yesterday, and $9, which is where the offer is. Someone could be making some money in the next few days.
Scupper. That's a great word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Well done. Squeezing that one in just before the end of the year. Now, this is an interesting one, Sean. In a week where 2 women were appointed as CEOs to blue chip companies, a report shows that there are just 21 female chairs of top 200 companies, and just 36% of board seats have gone to females.
The Australian Institute of Company Directors research shows that in terms of female directors, last month was a record, with 35.7% of people in the boardroom at top 200 companies female, but they aren't getting the chair roles. Why? Well, part of the reason is that chairs tend to come from former CEOs, and there's not enough female CEOs. Having said that, this week Jane Norman took the top job at Cooper Energy, and Sherry Dew was named acting CEO at Newcrest, so maybe, just maybe, that'll change in coming quarters and years.
James Hardie Industries is cutting hundreds of jobs globally and making workers redundant right before Christmas as the building materials maker struggles with what it claims is a perfect storm of falling demand and soaring costs.
Around 100 jobs will be cut in the Asia-Pacific region, mostly in Australia, with employees receiving redundancy notices before Christmas, according to the Financial Review. The job losses are believed to number in the hundreds across James Hardie's operations in the US, Europe and Asia. The building materials company employs about 4,800 people globally after running really hard during the pandemic, thanks to a strong building sector, particularly in the US. James Hardie's share price has more than halved over the past year, hence they're looking for savings.
Sean, there's been some interesting data released by the Bureau of Statistics in recent days about the benefit of migration in Australia.
Yes, migrants hold around 26% of all jobs in Australia, which is actually below their 29% share of the population. Around 57% of jobs are held by permanent migrants, 30% by temporary migrants, the other 13% by New Zealanders. And the biggest job groupings are administrative and support services, healthcare and social assistance, and accommodation and food services. Almost 4 million migrant taxpayers earned more than $230 billion in the 2020 financial year, where these figures come from. It sounds a lot, but the median annual personal income was around $45,000. That's well lower than the $52,000 figure for the population as a whole.
And just quickly as well, the Bureau also released data about the rebound in tourism jobs, which now provide about 1 in 25 of all the jobs in Australia.
That's right. During the September quarter, there were about 604,000 jobs in tourism, up 3% from the previous quarter, but nearly 60% higher than a year ago, which of course was when COVID was rampant.
Sean, the media regulator has found that a 2-part Four Corners investigation into Fox News and its reporting of the Donald Trump presidency breached accuracy and fairness requirements in the ABC's Code of Practice.
The Australian Communications and Media Authority has been investigating the ABC for the past year or so, and a 2-part show called Fox and the Big Lie, headed by investigative journalist Sarah Ferguson. In the program, Four Corners spoke to media commentators and former executives at Rupert Murdoch's 24-hour news network about its coverage of Donald Trump. Responding to a complaint by Fox News, ACMA concluded that the program omitted key information that meant it reported information in a way that materially misled the audience. That is quite a whack in the media world. ACMA also found one interviewee was not properly informed about the way this show would be presented.
Finally, Sean, before we move on to overseas news, the co-founders and former shareholders of Superhero will resume control of the share trading platform in a management buyout, parting ways with new owner SwiftX amid a regulatory crackdown on crypto firms.
Yes, this relationship didn't last very long. The Australian Financial Review is reporting that SwiftX will sell Superhero back to its founders, John Winters and Wayne Baskin, and the consortium of investors who initially bankrolled the neo-broker's birth 2 years ago. That includes buy now, pay later pioneers Nick Molnar and Larry Diamond, alongside fund managers Regal, Wilson Asset Management and OFA.
All right, moving on to overseas news now, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to visit the White House and the US Capitol this week. His first trip really outside the country since Russia's invasion began back in February.
Zelensky is expected to meet congressional leadership and National Security Committee chiefs from the Republican and Democratic parties and could address a joint session of Congress, according to Bloomberg. The Ukrainian leader made a surprise trip to troops in the battered eastern frontline city of Bakhmut, underlying Russia's stuttering but persistent attempts to capture it. Zelensky last left Ukraine for the Munich Security Conference in February 19, hasn't left his country since.
Sean, Donald Trump is under more fire with the US Parliamentary Committee voting to release partially redacted tax filings of the former US president.
Yes, as Trump runs for the White House again in 2024, information about his tax affairs between 2015 and 2021, which he's fought very, very hard to keep private, will potentially work against him. Candidates aren't actually required to make their tax statements public, but everyone does. Then again, I suppose normally someone as rich as Mr. Trump doesn't become president. Anyway, the tax filings are expected to become public in coming days. It hasn't been a good few months since the midterm elections for Donald Trump, and he's pushed to become president again.
And finally, Sean mentioned this one at the top of the show. Elon Musk says that he will step down as chief executive of Twitter once he finds someone foolish enough, they are his words, to take the job.
Yes, a couple of days ago, Musk ran a poll on Twitter asking whether he should step down as head of Twitter, or as he puts it, Chief Twit. 57.5% of respondents said yes. So he's moving aside. Instead, he'll just run the servers and software teams, he said. Imagine working for those teams. Of course, he'll also keep running Tesla. He'll keep an eye on SpaceX as well, no doubt. Anyway, he's not going to be the CEO of Twitter.
All right, up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Jason Pellegrino, CEO of Domain.
Yeah, great chat about the property market, what's happened in 2022 and how that's hit Domain's share price and its performance, and also what he expects to happen in 2023.
Yes, coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 22nd of December, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to check out the new episode of How Do They Afford That, which is out now, all about buy now, pay later. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.